Did we just witness a day two of a Jamar Chase hold-in? Let's break it down.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. I'm your host, Jake Lisco. He is your host, James Rapine. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network here on Locked On Bengals, covering your team every day as the Cincinnati Bengals are getting through training camp. That is where our focus is. Of course, right now you can find us on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts, and join the many everydayers and those of you who make us your first listen. Shout outs to the regulars out there. Appreciate you for making us part of your routine. If you're new, welcome to the Locked On Bengals Club. Today, James, we are going to dive into what's going on with Jamar Chase as Zac Taylor addressed the media and talked about this, or didn't talk about this, after practice. Today's episode is sponsored by LinkedIn Jobs, who will help you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl, where you can post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. And Jamar Chase hasn't practiced in 2 days of training camp, James. A little bit of a surprise to me, even after the offseason program's non-participation outside of walkthrough. He's doing a little bit of work after practice. Sounds like he and Zac are on the same page, or at least that's what Zac says. What do you make of Zac's comments? What's really going on? Jamar Chase refusing to comment, essentially saying no comment, and saying he wasn't going to speak with the media on Thursday.
Yeah, I put these comments, Zac's comments, on Cincinnati Bengals Talk. I tweeted it out. It's on YouTube. But I think, let's call it like it is. He is holding it. It's exactly what this is. And it is contract related. And because he's healthy. So why else would he be out and not practice at all for the past two? That's where Zac, he's smart, because he never said it was contract related. But he also said that Jamar was fully healthy, because if you hesitate there, then we're opening up a whole nother can of worms. And so the fact that Jamar is healthy, well, then why else would he not participate at all? I've talked about this a few times, dating back to the offseason program. Like, going through drills, individual drills, is nothing. Like, a lot of those individual drills are easy. Sometimes they're more intense, but you can be pretty injured and go through them as a receiver. I've seen T. Higgins specifically do that and then not play that week. And so for Jamar to not do anything, not have cleats, it's pretty clear what's going on here. And there's two sides of the coin here, Jake. Obviously the negative one, and it will get out. And I think, especially over the next 24 to 48 hours from a national standpoint, I think it'll be talked about on all these shows. But it's like, all right, well, Jamar Chase is mad about his contract. He wants a new deal. And you have Mike Brown making the comments he made earlier this week about it potentially being unlikely and all of those things and hard to get done. He also said that they're going to bend over to get it done, bend over backwards to get it done. So who knows? Maybe they get it done. The really optimistic, if you want to take that approach, would be, oh, well, maybe they are negotiating right now. And they are on the same page. And there is hope that a deal gets done in the semi-near future. There is hope that a deal gets done in training camp. And so if that's the case, why put Jamar out there, which is real easy for Zac Taylor to get on the same page if they're negotiating. And Rocky Arsenault, I believe, is his agent. And so we'll see. But it depends on which side of the coin you're on. Hopefully it's the latter, I think, from a Bengals standpoint for our listeners. But we'll see.
May have to grudgingly give Adam Schefter some credit for his rant on NFL Live the other day when he said Jamar Chase isn't going to play for $1 million, which he later corrected in a tweet on Thursday to $4.8 million or whatever the number is.
Well, that's not true. 100% Jamar Chase will play this year. 1,000%.
Well, yeah, but like the thrust behind his comments were that there is more discontent there than perhaps was publicly known at the time.
Sure. And look, if you're Jamar and you've looked at these deals, why not try to get a deal done with me now? And let's just knock this out now and not wait a year. I've looked at the Justin Jefferson path and thought, oh, well, Jamar is teammates with him. He'll be fine with that. And we haven't heard Jamar to know. But he also may be like, no, Justin got hurt last year. He went into that year, got hurt, didn't have a huge year. The Vikings gave him the deal anyway, but I want my money now. And I do think that there's that could be a sticking point for Jamar. We'll see if he gets it done.
There were an unusual number of players from his draft class signed before the fourth year of their deal this offseason as well.
Yeah.
Like a pretty outrageous number. In fact, if you look at recent trends in history and stuff like that, the examples of guys taking longer are a little bit further in the past. So not everybody that got drafted his year that's good at football got an extension this offseason. But and we're talking about first round non-quarterbacks to be specific, because quarterbacks are a different breed. Second round, third round picks going into the last year of their deal without the fifth year option. Different scenario there, right? But I like the optimistic outlook, that potential explanation. It's possible that Jamar Chase just misses a bunch of training camp practices and holds in throughout and then gets ready for the regular season, because he's not going to miss any time in the regular season. He doesn't really have that luxury. He can make his preferences known through his behavior in training camp, but extending that to the regular season, I don't think that the current CBA really gives him that luxury. That's not something that he can practically do and not hurt himself in the long term and in the short term. But the optimist take that you had there, that, hey, maybe they actually are closer than we thought. Maybe something happened between Mike Brown's comments and the beginning of practices, and suddenly things became very clear between Jamar's camp and the Bengals that actually we want to get this done now. We wanted to wait for Justin Jefferson, but we don't want to wait for CeeDee Lamb. We don't want to wait for Brandon Ayuk or Tyreek Hill to potentially get a new deal, or whatever other deal you think might have some impact on the wide receiver market. Although, as we've discussed previously in the last couple of weeks, it's hard to imagine any of those guys quite getting to the Justin Jefferson number anyway. But it's possible that Jamar's just ready now, and he's like, okay, we got Justin done. Now let's get me done. Let's get it done, Bengals. And it's just taking a little bit of time to come to fruition, but maybe it is close. You never know.
Yeah, we don't know. And that's why I don't want to fly off the handle and say, oh my gosh, the Bengals just made their second best player mad and upset. He doesn't feel upset. Like, it seems fine. Like, I'm watching his body language. It's normal Jamar. And so maybe this is just the business side playing itself out, and maybe they are. By the way, and you said this a few weeks ago, especially with CeeDee Lamb asking the Cowboys for Justin Jefferson plus money. Let's just figure it out. If Jamar wants a deal and is willing to sign now and open to different structures and things like that, and I'm sure he is, I'm sure he's going to give them some flexibility there, the Bengals should want to try to get something done too. And I go back, I should have pulled the clip, but I'm thinking about it. Duke Tobin, one of the things he said when asked about Jamar was, well, I think we know that he's valuable to us and he's happy here and we're happy with him. And usually when that's the case, you can work something out. And I hope that is the case, because I think they know his value and he knows the value of being here with Joe as well. Yeah. It's not like he's catching passes from insert whatever quarterback that I don't want to rip to catch strays right now, but he's not catching passes from, whoever. He's catching passes from Trevor Siemian, right? He's catching passes from Joe Burrow, not Trevor Siemian. There you go. Sorry, Trevor. So it's a good place to be if you're Jamar.
I was going to go with Justin Fields, who is the number one quarterback right now in Pittsburgh, with Russell Wilson dealing with a calf injury.
You're trying to just be controversial, all right. Trying to make the Steelers fans mad.
This is a Bengals podcast. We're allowed to go after the Steelers here. I think those are the rules. The Bengals would be served to get the deal done with Jamar Chase if Jamar Chase is ready to get the deal done. That's the thing, right? Like, we've kind of been under this assumption that maybe Jamar wasn't ready. Maybe he's waiting for other dominoes to fall. But if that's not the case, and it seems like that's not the case, there are reasons from a total money perspective, from a salary cap perspective. You can spread it out more with a signing bonus this year that goes into 2 years of his rookie deal, plus an option bonus down the road to prorate more money later. A lot of reasons the Bengals should get it done, not the least of which is getting him back to practice and getting him as many reps as possible to get ready for the season. Speaking of getting ready for the season, Joe Burrow continues a pretty strong start to camp and an improvement by most accounts from day one to day two. Let's talk about how the Bengals star quarterback fared in training camp practice number 2 coming up next.
Today's show is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers.
Joe Burrow back in action for day number 2 of Cincinnati Bengals training camp, and sounds like things were better. There were highlights, there are deep throws, there's completions all over the field. Joe Burrow mentioned in his presser yesterday, which we didn't talk about, a very interesting quote that I missed, to be totally honest, before we started recording yesterday, that he had kind of a eureka moment where something kind of clicked for him, not physically clicked in his wrist, but mentally clicked in his throwing motion, where he found something that he was excited to work on and he thought could lead to more consistency. James, you got to watch all of the throws, of course, as you were in person attendance watching practice today. What were your takeaways watching Joe Burrow practice for the second straight day, knowing, of course, that the plan is for him not to practice, at least as of today, on Friday when the Bengals get together for their third training camp practice?
Well, you're talking about, multiple 11-on-11 sessions now. No interceptions. That's one thing. Not a lot of batted balls, not a lot of passes broken up. There were a couple of times where Joe scrambled today, which interesting. Now, part of that is when the defense is getting pressure, but you just want to see, all right, how's he carrying that new weight? My buddy Mike Petralia brought up to Zach, was like, hey, a year ago when he scrambled, no, he looked good moving around. It was the first time we kind of saw him move a little bit. But as far as throwing goes, yeah, he pushed the ball down the field, had a nice hookup with Cedric Jackson downfield, was accurate with his throws to really everyone. Had a couple nice back shoulder throws to Andrei Iosivas, connected with Charlie Jones on one, was able to find Mike Gesicki a couple of times. And I really think Mike Gesicki is going to be a big part of this offense. It just feels that way. And there was one time, and I tweeted the clip, Burrow was on one page and Gesicki was on another, and Gesicki was mad at himself, and Joe came over and explained it anyways. And they were talking for 45 seconds or so, working through something. And I get the vibe that Joe realizes what Mike could mean for this offense. And so he's going back all the way to the offseason program. When we first saw videos of that, just talking through things, they're working through the chemistry, and obviously they've had a lot of nice plays early on. So no, I think Joe's checked really everything that you could hope for and has been able to push the ball down the field multiple times in each of the past 2 days and has been accurate. And like I said, the turnovers, there hasn't been a turnover from Joe. And one of these accounts got me after day one. It was like, and Joe Burrow with the interception, just joking around. It was a Bengals account on X. And it was Jake Browning who threw it. I was like, are you serious? I said that on Locked On and I was wrong. And I was like, no, it was actually Jake. But I did a double take. So there you go.
Wait, neither of us said Joe Burrow threw a pick, right?
No, Jake Browning threw it.
Okay.
Like it was Jake. Jake
right.
did it.
It's confusing with
not
all the
you,
J's.
Jake.
Yeah.
Jake, it was Browning. And so I was like, oh. But like I saw the play and I'm like, wait, what? And then I rewound it and it was number 6, not 9. I'm like, okay, good. I didn't lie to the
There
people.
we go. Encouraging to see Joe Burrow delivering to various parts of the field accurately. Encouraging to hear that he is feeling better about or excited about something that he discovered in his throwing mechanics. From a ball flight perspective, that was what Joe Burrow was specifically talking about in that quote. He said, essentially, the ball is going where I want it to go, but it's not always flying exactly how I want it to fly. It's not always, that tight spiral that we're accustomed to from Joe Burrow, one of the cleanest mechanics in the pocket in the NFL. Did you notice a significant difference from day one to day two from your eye?
I think there were a couple of throws, the one to Shedrick Jackson for sure, where I thought he was able to put it right where he wanted to and get it there exactly how fast he wanted to get it there. So there were a couple like that. I think there was a throw. I'm trying to think. It wasn't on a team period, but there was a couple throws, one to Jermaine Burton, one to Gesicki in individuals where it's like, all right, well, that had the zip that, that you're looking for as well. So it's such a little thing. And I think he's still working through it as far as that flick of the wrist. I was talking to Tony Pike about it. Still working through that a little bit, but I think he's where you would hope he would be on July 25th. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah, it's just, from my perspective, something that I hope gets resolved in its entirety pretty soon. I don't want to be talking about Joe Burrow's throwing mechanics for a long time. That makes me a little bit nervous, to be 100% transparent. I hope this is something that, he found this thing that he was excited to work on yesterday on the first practice of camp, and that spurs, the resolution of whatever it is he's still working on. He talked about the frustration of rehabbing where, you think you figured everything out and then something new comes up, right? And that's just part of the process that he's going through. But he is practicing in full. He's delivering the ball quite well. He's practiced well. The coaches are pleased with the way he's practiced. I think he was pretty happy with his first practice based on his comments to you guys in the media in his first training camp press conference on Wednesday as well. And just to circle back to the Mike Gesicki moment, and we'll talk about how Mike Gesicki has practiced and some of these other receivers. You mentioned Shedrick Jackson as well. Want to talk about Andrei Iosivas, of course. The benefit of having Joe Burrow present for training camp and taking those reps is that you get those moments. You get those player-to-player coaching moments or getting on the same page moments. You get those reps where last year, just thinking back to when Burrow missed a bunch of practices and we thought, oh, he shouldn't be too far behind. He's played with these guys for years. There's nothing terribly new here. Maybe Irv Smith, that connection isn't exactly where, it otherwise could be with an entirety of training camp, but getting the work in now with all these guys, especially the new faces, especially the faces that could be getting more playing time, that can only serve the Bengals and Joe Burrow and those receivers for the better. And I think that is a nice little reminder of a little thing that the Bengals have not had consistently in Joe Burrow's young career so far. And it's nice to see that so far in training camp this year.
Yeah, that's totally fair and totally reasonable. And that's why I'm not sweating a rest day, right? Or even a couple for some of these guys. I think the benefit, and we'll get to, it's a good transition into these young wide receivers. But the other benefit is that you get to see more Jermaine Burton because Jamar's out, or that T. Higgins isn't doing team drills. Andre gets reps. Charlie Jones gets reps. Shedrick Jackson gets reps. And we could go on. But those four, they're getting a ton of valuable reps, and that matters. And especially when it comes to getting on the same page as number 9.
Yeah, and we're going to stay on the offense here. We're going to stay focused on these receiving weapons and some of the first impressions there, and some of the other observations on the offensive side of the ball, with Joe Burrow taking Friday off and then an off day afterward. We'll get back to some defensive observations. And honestly, the defensive stuff really ramps up when the pads come on as well. But we don't hate the defense. We don't, I promise you. But obviously a lot of drama kind of going around with Ja'Marr Chase right now, and all eyes on Joe Burrow as he returns to training camp practices and seeing how he's doing. So the focus will continue there for this episode, but we will get to the defense. I promise you that. And like I said, coming up next, we'll get into some of these other receivers not named T. Higgins, who didn't practice on Thursday, not named Ja'Marr Chase, coming up next.
Today's show is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs is the perfect place to go when you're hiring for your small business because you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. And that's why you got to go to LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else. Even those who aren't actively searching for a new job might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Join the movement today. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
James, there are other receivers on this football team, not named Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Surprise, surprise. And Zac Taylor did mention that there were planned rest days. Of course, if you listened yesterday, you knew that today was a planned rest day for T. Higgins. It was also a planned rest day for Trey Hendrickson. Cam Taylor-Britt was back at the practice field coming off his tonsil removal, but didn't practice. So there are a number of veterans, and Zac Taylor went down a laundry list of veterans that he's had, according to him, very good communication with around planning for their availability and keeping them fresh and getting them ready for the season, because that's the goal. As we're going to continue to emphasize, it is not the goal to be ready in July. The goal is to be ready for the regular season. But that being said, there were a number of players that got increased opportunities because T. Higgins didn't practice, because Jamar Chase didn't practice, and Amarius Mims continues to work with the first team offensive line as Trent Brown remains out of practice. And notably among those seemed to be Jermaine Burton making some heads turn, let's say, in his return to action in training camp. Maybe some time studying between the offseason program and training camp did him well. Continuing to work, it sounds like, largely with the second team, and I'll let you jump in there with context. But also Andrei Iosivas certainly continuing his strong offseason, carrying over to training camp, and Mike Gesicki making some significant splashes as the team's latest tight end of the year.
Yeah, I think it's such an interesting dynamic because it's pretty unpredictable. All of these guys are versatile. And the one guy that we weren't sure, all right, he's probably just an outside guy coming into camp, Andrei Iosivas. Well, now he's moving all around. And I think that he's moving all around because they looked at it and they said, how can we get this guy on the field more? I really do. I think that's what's gone into them saying, or in Duke earlier this week saying, hey, that's a guy that we think can play everywhere. Because you look at it, he's got the size to be a big slot. He's got the athleticism. He's clearly smart enough. Why wouldn't you put him in the slot and see what he can do? And the thing that I liked about Thursday's practice, multiple hands catches away from his body. I mentioned the back shoulder, but had a really nice catch in traffic too, where he had to go get it with his hands held on with DJ Turner swiping at it, which is really, really tough to do. So Andrei Iosivas, stock up, really impressed with what I've seen from him. Yeah. And then Jermaine.
I just wanted to focus on the hands catch note specifically for Iosivas, for people who maybe weren't tracking him particularly closely in his rookie year, where he was productive, especially in the red zone, right? But one of the things that we knew he had to work on was going outside of his frame, being more comfortable outside of his frame. Similarly sized to Tyler Boyd, more similarly sized to Tyler Boyd in terms of height and weight than I realized before I put them side by side. Obviously, some better tested athleticism for Iosivas, older player coming out of college too, and that tends to favor the older player in the athleticism numbers. But yeah, from a build perspective, from a intelligence, you would presume, perspective coming from the Ivy League, the slot should be a doable task for him. It's just such a change from what we heard from Iosivas earlier in the offseason, and such a change from, as he admitted last year, he didn't work in the slot at all last year, even in the spring, he said. And so seeing him get work all over the field at receiver, seeing him make those steps in going outside his frame more comfortably, if that translates, that's a very exciting foundation to build on for Andrei Iosivas.
It is. It is. And I think it's going to translate. I mean, I think he's going to contribute. It just seems it seems like he can just do enough that it's going to work. And he's had a really impressive couple of days. Another guy that I just wondered if he got it or not, and if it was going to take a little longer time wise, is Jermaine Burton. He lined up in the backfield today. This dude is moving all over. I mean, the play of the day is the double move that he had. He had a double move. Jake Browning was on the throw. And so, of course, I was like, it's second team. I didn't roll on that play, and I don't roll on every second team play. And, of course, it's the double move. And he was able to catch a deep ball. It was the highlight of the day for sure. And so you're seeing Jermaine do a little bit more. Yesterday had the one-handed catch that a lot of people saw. The hands, the speed, it's there. And yet afterwards, Zac Taylor said, yeah, he's just learning. And you need him to keep learning. And that's the beauty of these reps is even though he's working a lot with Browning, he still catches passes from Burrow. And he caught passes from Burrow during individual drills and was out there some with the first team. And so, yeah, I think Burton getting valuable reps and has been I would be encouraged with how he's been used through the first 2 days. I would say that much.
And maybe flying under the radar in addition to those guys, and I didn't mention his name. I don't think I've mentioned his name in the last 2 days. Is Charlie Jones, who maybe there's not as much hype there, but has been noted for making some pretty notable plays in practices in both of the first 2 practices, just not quite getting the level of attention, it seems, as Andrei Iosivas, Jermaine Burton, and obviously the starters.
Because they've been smooth. They've just been like little smooth plays, not like, oh my God, did you see Andre's back shoulder where both guys fell to the ground? And, the
helmet pops off. And
they've just been smooth plays. And I agree with you. I talked to Charlie afterwards in the locker room. He said he's up to around 188, 187 in that range. He's just shy of 6 foot. So you think about it, 5'11", 187, that's about right. So he's added at least 10, probably 12 pounds this offseason and looks just as fast as he did. It's not like he's lost the explosion. So hopefully that translates and he continues to have a good camp, because if you think of it that way, you look at all these guys they have, and if they're as versatile as it looks like, I mean, we haven't mentioned Trenton Irwin. We know he's as steady as they come. Gesicki, we obviously have talked about. Plus these other 2 guys. I mean, it's crazy. Like Cedric Jackson's making plays. Yeah. And he's on the outside looking in. Like, it's really tough. It's a really dynamic room.
And how many years would we be talking about, hey, look, Cedric Jackson took a leap and is going to make this team as a 6th receiver. Could be a game day active. And now instead it's, man, that's a tough job to make the team. Plus they're working out Hakeem Butler reportedly and trying to figure out how he fits into the roster. That's an interesting one. That was reported on Thursday or on Wednesday night after we recorded. So first we've mentioned it here, but quite a lot of talent going on for the Bengals at the receiving position right now, with Gesicki showing up in a big way and establishing some chemistry with Joe Burrow here early in training camp, something that is exciting to happen early. The Bengals really didn't get much out of that position last year, and certainly have overhauled the room. And if that develops into another threat for this offense, the trajectory that it's on early should be good news for this Bengals offense.
Yeah, it should. It really should. I think it's 2 days in. You don't want to overreact, but a lot of these young guys have made a leap. Yeah. Like Andrei just looks different out there. I just mentioned, I don't know how much weight he gained or what it was. It doesn't matter, but he looks different and he's playing really well, and you hope it continues. And I'm interested to see how these guys do without Burrow and when it's Jake Browning and we see that first unit essentially with Browning leading the show, and if there's that same consistency and all of those things. So
it's actually much more exciting than last year, thinking about practices without Joe Burrow, because of the confidence that Jake Browning instilled going down the stretch last year, playing pretty well. So
he had a rough first practice. Yeah, he had a rough first practice. He was better today, but we'll see. We'll see how Jake does.
It should be more interesting than last year.
Yes.
Let's just
no doubt. Last year was
say
just
that.
weird. Yeah, it was really weird.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Didn't talk a lot about the trenches. That is intentional. Pads are not on yet. And while from the clips, it looks like Sheldon Rankins is having a good time to start training camp. And we talked about Trey Hendrickson yesterday coming to the sideline with Sam Hubbard and also seemingly having a very good time and some wins for the defensive trenches. We will talk more about the trench battles when pads are on. We'll talk more about what's going on with the secondary performances. But just because of where the stories have been, some of the bigger stories have been so far for camp, wanted to dig into the offense a little bit here today. The Bengals have one more practice this week. We'll be back on Sunday, and then there's back together weekend practices on Sunday night, and then they're back to 3 in a row, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. So we'll have plenty of content for you coming up starting on Sunday. Until then, thanks for listening to this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. Hoo day, and have a good one.